We would now like to call upon the Chair for Session 1, Mr. Rajendra Pratap Gupta, Public Policy Expert, Panelists, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, Director, NHSRC, Ministry of Family Health and Welfare, Government of India, Dr. S.D. Gupta, President, IHMR, Mr. Shashank ND, Co-founder and CEO, Practo, Mr. Vikram Tivathia, the Deputy Director General of COAI, Mr. Sushil Kumar, Deputy Director General, TEC, Government of India, Ms. Padmaja Ruparel, President, IAN, Mr. Sudarshan Jain, MD, Abbott Healthcare, Mr. Hemant Bharadwaj, Co-founder, MD and CEO of the Fanish Murthy Health and Life Care.
Very good morning to you all. So, two of my panelists are on the way. They are stuck on the highway, so they will arrive as they stop in, they will come to the dais. So very aptly, as Vamsi said, for 2 days we are going to talk about the role of IT in healthcare, what we need to do. But the essence is you cannot do anything unless you have enabling policy framework. So the right way to start was to have a session on the enabling policies. I have with me a very distinguished panel of experts, and I would start with each one of them giving an introduction about who they are, and then we'll move to specifics of asking them on what they want to say. So to the right, I have Mr. Sudarshan Jain.
So right at the outset, thank you very much, Rajan, to invite us. My name is Sudarshan Jain. I'm the Managing Director of Abbott Healthcare Private Limited and also the Vice President of Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers of India.
Hi, my name is Hemant Bharadwaj. I lead the team at PMHLC. We are quite young in this space. We just floated this company this year and hope to interact with you and learn from you guys. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Dr. S.D. Gupta. I'm President of the IHMR University. I have a background of public health. I have spent my career in research. I started from my career from village and working with the health system, more focused on policy and health research all through my professional career. And at IHMR, we did great innovations, and the greatest among them was creating a new discipline of health management and setting agenda for research in policy and program management in the country and in the Southeast Asia region.
I'm Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, a medical doctor by training, but I do very little of medicine now. I'm more of a manager. Currently, I head an institution called National Health Systems Resource Center. This institution provides technical support to the Ministry of Health. Currently, we are involved in writing the National Health Policy 2015. The final version should be out in a few months' time. And my background, I did my MBBS and MD from All India Institute of Medical Sciences. I worked in the Army for 5 years. Then I went into teaching. Then I went into UN, worked for about 25 years in 29 countries. And I came back in 2011 to India. Because of homesickness, I took early retirement to be back home. And I'm so excited. There's so many exciting things happening in India, and I feel we are at a threshold where you will see substantial improvement in health. The indicators have already started accelerating, and I'm sure it will continue with initiatives like Digital India. I'm sure we are in for a very bright time in public health in the country. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The name is Vikram Tivathia, and like most of my colleagues on the dais, they are all doctors and prefix their name with DR. I'm an engineer by profession, and I should be prefixing by ER. So I'll try and provide the engineering aspect and, out of the agenda for the discussions, the digital part and how to facilitate digital. And it's an honor to be sitting next to an ex-Army man and to see some Army folks as well in the audience. I too spent 25 years in the Army Communications Arm, and I'm currently the DDG at COAI. Our members are all the telecom licensees, that's Airtel, Idea, Vodafone, Uninor, Videocon, Reliance Jio, Idea, and all the telecom equipment vendors. So much of the digital portion that has to happen would be the string that we run commonly through as part of the broadband or the wireless coverage. So I'll try and dwell on some of the policies on that side.
Hi, good morning. I'm Shashank. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Practo. Practo is the largest digital health platform in Asia right now. We provide digital solutions to providers, doctors, and to consumers. We'll talk a lot more about it later today. My background, I'm an engineer too. I started the company in my college when I was in my final year. It's been a 7-year journey so far, and would love to share more later today.
Hi, good morning everybody, and I'm sorry I ran in late, the traffic just did me in. But I'm the co-founder and CEO of Indian Angel Network. We are probably now world's largest angel investor group, very, very active. We have about 350 plus investors from 10 countries. We invest in young startup innovative companies. Well, in terms of what we've done is just taking 1 year, last year, we've invested in 29 companies over 70 crores in 1 year. This year, till first 6 months of the year has been very, very active, about 60 crores in 21 companies already. We are really looking to invest in innovative technologies and business models as well, catering to large markets, and what I would say kick-ass promoter team. So that's why I'm here, I suppose.
Thanks, Padmaja. You know, it is very important to have people who have money. So, and if you have money, you know, still you need policies where you can have entrepreneurs. I thought of no other person than Padmaja to come to us and share with us what is she seeing in the healthcare space as entrepreneurs. Is there an enabling policy framework, and what more the government needs to do to create an ecosystem? Because like the world over, healthcare will not be run by big established companies. I mean, the best companies are still in R&D, and they're yet to be born probably. And India still doesn't have the Microsoft or the, you know, KPs of the world and all. So please share with us your experience of what you have seen so far in terms of the entrepreneurs in healthcare, what you look at when you invest in them, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions. We have to be particular with time in terms of, because we know the last session is there being addressed by the minister, and we have a minute-to-minute program. So we'll try to make up for the delay in the schedule in the subsequent sessions in the breaks. Over to Padmaja.
Sure, thanks Rajendra, and feel free to stop me when you want. First of all, I completely agree. I think this country's healthcare system is not something that we can tom-tom about. There is a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of gaps, and that's exactly where I think we as an entrepreneur, as a society, as government, and as policymakers, we can all really add value. I think on this very dais we have Practo sitting, and it's a great example. In my view, I see healthcare as a huge opportunity. It's a $65 billion opportunity just on a very conservative estimate. 65% of that is almost in the hospitalization and what I would call curative. But increasingly in this country, as education and wealth increases, as consciousness of health increases, I think wellness is something we should not forget. And there's a whole opportunity there that curative sciences or curative medicine is very important. Which in overall, if we as laymen are also focused on curative, I think we'll go less down the preventive in some ways. So it's actually a very healthy option. The second thing that I think, we as a nation are a services nation. So we believe, we've grown a lot of our industries, be it the IT industry, be it the BPO industry, be it the hospitality, be it retail. I think the services aspect is something that we've grown dramatically. But what we are seeing as investors, and what we are, both from the entrepreneur ecosystem and what we are seeing as an appetite from the investor world, is really moving towards the product side. An ability to sort of create and leverage internet, ability to leverage design, innovative prototypes, innovative research is really whetting the appetites. And let me just give you a few examples so you have a sense of why I'm saying this. So one of our early companies that we had invested in was really driven by services, which was a company called Karmic Life Sciences, which was a CRO company, which was, if you look at the basic business model, was services model. But after that, we invested in another healthcare company, which was a company called Consort, which is into med device company, which is an anti-fecal, low-cost med device. The reason I brought this out, I think while it was very, very much born and brought up in India in the Stanford Biodesign Center in Delhi, I think what it has done is something exceptional. It has really leveraged the global network that we as IAN talk about. It's sort of designed its product in Germany, refined the prototype in California, buying the components in China and Southeast Asia, and sort of bringing it all together as a value add in India. And, you know, in some ways, sort of creating an Indian product which is built overseas, but for a very emerging economy and an emerging market. And the latest that we heard was actually it was a US upmarket hospital which is now doing the clinical trials for that. So something which was born for economies like ours has moved overseas. And it's done its FDA and CA approval in about 9 months. So it's really something which is global in that sense. The second thing which I should point out, because as angel investors, we really don't look at investments for more than $1 million. We really invest in very high risk, very startup, very prototype stage. And therefore, you know, $1 million coming from a group of individuals from their personal wealth is a sizable amount. And we broke one of the myths, I think, because I think we always thought that pharma or drug trials was not something that angels would look at. And that was where I was coming from. But lo and behold, we invested in a company called Vitus Pharma, which is into drug trials. So why I brought these out is we are moving from services to products to research in some ways. And I think we are not only investing, but what I do see is that investor group leverages a lot of its strategic thinking. How can you innovate on business models? How can you leverage global connects in markets? How can you reduce costs, increase, you know, we have an investor in our network who has a 1,700 bed hospital, which is probably the largest in North India, where the clinical trials are starting to happen for Consort, for example. So, you know, that quote unquote in-house bed of testing is there. So we are increasingly seeing this movement happening, both in terms of the propositions as well as in terms of very high risk money coming into this space. And healthcare, I think, even more than education purely from an investor table, I'm finding healthcare is of much more interest. Though I do feel education has its claim and we should, but I think healthcare is taking it. The second thing that I'm very clearly seeing is a lot of money going towards wellness spaces. So, you know, simple things, execution plays like spa chains, like retinopathy, your lab test chains, Android-based clinical tests, all these are growing. And it's certainly in our minds very clear that it's not going to be one player. It's such a huge market and such a huge opportunity that there is space for more players. And there is space for players both in terms of the technology and the product that they create, but honestly, it is going to be the execution that will matter. How quickly, how fast, how well, how do you scale up and really build businesses? The last thing that I would like to say before Rajendra sort of tells me to stop is really, I think we've seen a lot of technology entrepreneurs who've built products, who've built prototypes. I think the one thing we invest a lot of time in not only diligencing but also giving feedback to entrepreneurs, that just having a product or a research prototype or an idea will be very difficult to raise money on. Because investors, just so that everybody is clear, are interested in the technology and the product, but they need to see the business side of it. Unless there is a quote-unquote business, it's going to be extremely hard to raise money. And we also understand, on the other hand, that there are a lot of innovators in the healthcare system, in the ecosystem specifically, who are doing brilliant work, who've created some very innovative products. We've seen things for cardiac surgery, we've seen things for orthopedics, we've seen things for diabetes, all of those we've seen. And I think we would love to invest more, but there is that business angle that I think we need to bring in. It's not only medicine and science, but there has to be that business angle that I'd like to say. And the last point to Rajendra's question on policy, I think on a very macro level, there is money in the private industry. I'm very, very clear. I mean, when we send out an investment announcement, we raise money literally in an hour. I mean, I send out an investment announcement for 3 crores, and I have actually closed and raised the money in 56 seconds. So that, there is money, there's no doubt. I think the policy ecosystem, what we are missing, and especially when you see things in Canada, and which is probably the best healthcare system that exists in the world, you see in the UK or you see in the US, I think our policy ecosystem has not been geared or framed to leverage this private money in some ways. So how do you seed innovation? How do you seed really high-end product breeding centers, number one? Number two is, how do you leverage diligence and personal money or private money by the government? I mean, the reality is the government does not have the domain expertise that the private sector has. I mean, there are doctors, there are scientists, there are investors, they all carry that domain expertise. How can we leverage that? I mean, we have schemes all over the world where if the private investor is investing 50 or 75%, the government just leverages that diligence and comes in with 25%. And the last point is, I think, our patenting and our IP ecosystem. I think it needs to be dramatically accelerated and made more robust. So,
thanks, Padmja, for making very interesting points. So let me assure you, there is no dearth of money. We have the biggest angel network committing that in 1 hour we can raise. Trust me, there's no dearth of money. But you need to have certain checklists, you know, when you're getting into healthcare, you want to do and raise money. So we next come to a very interesting perspective. So entire healthcare system is about one thing. I can bet you, never you would have walked into a doctor's chambers and come out without a prescription. So the next important thing is pharma. And we have Sudarshan Jain, who is probably the top leader for the Indian pharma industry, share his perspective now. Sudarshan.
Thank you so much, Rajendra, and good morning to you all. It is indeed a pleasure to be part of this panel. What I like to do is set the context for more policy imperatives as far as healthcare sector is concerned. If we look at India, India is the pharmacy of the world. Every third tablet in US, generic tablet, is sold from India. So we have made tremendous progress as far as pharmacy is concerned, pharmaceutical industry is concerned. We have made tremendous progress as far as IT industry is concerned. Now, if we combine IT and pharma together, we can play a very major role to improve access of healthcare in this country. Because whatever said and done, only 50% of the population in India get the benefit of healthcare. On top of it, we have got tremendous advantage that median age in this country is 27 years. So the point which Padmaja was talking about is there is a startup ecological system, and if we strengthen it, we can make fundamental difference in delivery of healthcare to the masses, which is fundamental for the growth of the country. I'll quote you some figures about the way the healthcare system works worldwide, and we are releasing 2 major reports in the summit which we have got day after tomorrow, OPPI summit, which is IMF's report on access and the pricing policy, and the second is on healthcare financing. Some of the data which I will quote: India healthcare expenditure of GDP is overall expenditure is 4%, compared to UK of 9%, China of 5%, US of 17%. But what is more important is in India, 70% expenditure is by private sector. In UK it is 16%, in China it is 44%, in USA 53%. So it is the private sector which is playing a very, very important role. Public sector, by nature, has to invest in healthcare. The point which Padmaja you were talking about. As a corollary, what is happening is 60% is out of pocket expense in India, compared to say 9% in UK, and 34% in China, and 11% in US. So the question is very, very clear and obvious. Can government get away from healthcare? And the point is very, very important, that health and education becomes very, very important as far as the whole thing is concerned. We spend only 1% of GDP on healthcare. And if I see total government spending on healthcare is only 11%, 4%, compared to 11 to 15% of major countries. So one point which is very, very important, although we are saying that we should increase the expenditure on healthcare, is it going up? And we need to get to 3% expenditure level. The question always comes in, where to get these expenses? Because it is very easy to say that government should increase the expenses on healthcare, but every time there are different priorities. But world over, we have done the study of healthcare financing around the world. World over, healthcare and education becomes a priority. So we have to find out resource to spend on healthcare. And the return on spending on healthcare, and maybe I will circulate this report, is maximum if the government spends on healthcare. It leads to increased productivity, it leads to increased well-being of the people. Second point is, we did a study to understand the access issue in this country. So if you increase the expenditure, where you should spend your money on, because that is very, very important. It is not only increasing the spending, but where to spend the money. So we wanted to understand the issue of access. We did the study along with IMF on 15,000 households in the country, and we defined access on 4 parameters. That is availability of the facilities, physical proximity of the facilities. Second is availability of medical personnel. Third is governance of this infrastructure. And fourth is affordability of healthcare system. Now, if we look around and based on the evidence which is there, the problem is not availability of infrastructure, the problem is availability of doctors in the infrastructure. Second problem is that the infrastructure which is there is not working. Machines don't work at most of the time. And fourth is affordability. The issue is, in most of the policy matters, we talk more of affordability of the private sector. But the issue is beyond affordability, because if the doctors are not there, and if the governance is not there, the system will not work in. IT can play a very, very important role in this whole system to improve the governance as well as capability building. First is, when we are spending on healthcare, we need to spend on creating capability in this country. And that is, medical colleges have to go up, and the way maybe we need to work on telemedicine policy where e-prescriptions are allowed, because we are not very, very clear at this particular moment that despite the fact that the healthcare infrastructure is not there, can we use telemedicine? Can we have better methods, regulatory system where e-prescriptions are allowed and consultancy take place? Telemedicine can play a very, very powerful role. And in addition, increasing the capability of the doctors, we can have medical colleges across the country, because unless I have infrastructure, I can have medicine, but there has to be someone to deliver infrastructure. That becomes very, very important. There is also a very, very important area which a lot of work, maybe Hemant will talk about, online pharmacies. How do we make medicine available when the doctor has prescribed it? So there will be a lot of use of technology, and online pharmacy and maybe regulation in that case become very, very important. Hemant will talk about it. The last point is affordability. In India, yes, our medicines are affordable. What is more important, we have to invest in developing new drugs, new medicines that become very, very important. So from a regulation point of view, my suggestions are 4. One is increased expenditure in healthcare by government. We cannot avoid it. It is important that healthcare government has to step up the expenditure, and we have to find out the resources. Second is building the capability where doctors, we have to build the capability to generate doctors in this country and use of telemedicine. We need to have policies on e-prescriptions very clearly defined. And we have to have also the regulatory framework for online pharmacy clearly defined. There are ambiguities as far as the whole regulatory system is concerned. Third is we have to create and innovate and encourage the system of startups, which can play a very important role in delivery of healthcare. And fourth is public health financing in creating a healthcare financing infrastructure to provide healthcare to the needy, particularly in the chronic disease segment. I leave here at this moment with the next speaker.
Thanks, Sudarshan. This is excellent. I would ask now Shashank from Practo to share his views on what he is doing and what he needs as an enabling framework.
Sure, thank you so much. It's quite a phenomenal time that we're today in. I remember starting the company about 7 years back in 2008, and the whole, the situation today, the scenario today has completely changed. The most important change that has happened has been the number of internet devices in India. We would not realize this, but we are today the world's #2 in terms of internet devices. We were almost, I think, somewhere around the 50th or 60th just 5 years back. And from the number of being about, in the world, being about 50th to being the second largest is quite a journey. We had only 30 million internet devices in India in 2010. Today we have more than 300 million internet devices in India. That's more than the US. At least one number that we are more than the US in. That's phenomenal because of two reasons. When we started Practo, we were trying to bring in digital infrastructure to doctors and patients, to do many of the things that we are talking today about, where prescriptions can be digitally sent to the patient at least. Lab reports can be digitally shared with the patients. And many such things, many such initiatives. And we found the single biggest issue being that doctors did not have access to quality internet. And they had to use laptops and desktops. It was very difficult. And consumers too did not have access to internet. But the scenario has completely changed. So I'm glad to be part of this panel, which has digital as its first word, Digital India Health Summit. Going forward, the number of internet users in India is only going to increase from 300 all the way to 700 million. 700 million people connected by the same network has never been achieved before. I think that's going to be extremely powerful. And let me share why. I'll just narrate a small incident that happened a couple of, I think almost 6 to 7 months back. So I was a part of a panel similar to this, and I was on the stage. I was wearing a Practo t-shirt. And I stepped off my stage, and it was the recess. And I was walking around. One gentleman, very excited, came behind me and tapped me on the shoulder. And I turned around. And he was, he was catching up his breath, and he said, you're Practo, thank you so much. And I said, oh, okay, I'm Practo. I have a name too, but that besides. He said, you saved my grandmother's life. And I was taken aback. I don't have a DR in front of my name. So clearly, I was trying to understand what does he mean. And he said that, for 2 years, he has been taking his grandmother to different doctors, and she was suffering for a particular condition. And it was a very rare condition, and that, very few doctors are specialized in that condition. And he said out of frustration, he typed that condition on Google, and one of the Practo's doctor's links came up. Because the doctor who on Practo had cared enough to put that particular problem, the specialization, on his profile. And because this doctor came up, he realized that this doctor specializes in this particular condition, and he took his grandmother there. And voila, the problem got solved. And a very worried man who spent a lot of time now is very happy because he has a very healthy grandmother. Now that's the power of digital, where a consumer, and this person was in Tier 2 city. He was not even a Tier 1 city. And these people from Tier 2 cities and in smaller towns not probably have access to the specializations that are available in the metro cities. So this gentleman just took out his mobile phone and on Google just typed the condition that his grandmother is suffering from, and And the answer he found. And there's a doctor who has spent 30 years solving that particular problem, and they got connected. This is possible because of the internet devices. And that's why I spent so much time explaining the power of having 300 million internet devices in India, and the power of that going on to becoming 600 million internet devices. I think the quality of healthcare will go up. I think accessibility, if accessibility goes up, the cost will come down. I'm pretty sure that all around efficiency will go up tremendously in every element, be it curative, be it preventive, be it diagnostic, be it pharmacy-oriented elements, be it even doctors doing anything. So that was one such example. Let me give you an example of a provider. So 7 years, the first 4 years I had bootstrapped when angel networks were not very strong, Padmaja, 2008 to 2011. Today they are a force to reckon with, and very, very proud to know that in 56 seconds we can do 3 crores now. It's amazing, the power of the angel network. So in the first few years of our journey, I had the opportunity to spend time with thousands of doctors. Literally, as an engineer, it was fascinating to talk to them because they had so many problems that could be very easily solved using technology. But scalable technology were not being created. Adding to Padmaja's points, it's products that can scale. And IT products for doctors were not really in the core center. And in 2009, we launched our first product for a doctor. Let me give you an example of how this helped him. So this doctor was a small practitioner in a very crowded place in Bangalore, but one of the most smartest doctors I've met. He had a problem. He was practicing for about 15 to 20 years, and his cabinets were full of medical records. And he literally was running out of place for his patients because the paper records were so much in nature that it was a very popular doctor in that town. After he started using a digital product, he was able to completely free up the space in his clinic. And because of that, he was very happy that one, his records are now maintainable, and it can be in a digital format. And he showed me literally cupboards of empty space. And he said, finally now I don't have to worry about physical records, and I can now depend on digital records. And that's how the power of digital is, where it can connect people, it can be of extremely helpful to even providers. And I can go into more examples. But just to round off on the question around what are the policy initiatives that one would need to further enhance the already wonderful IT revolution that's happening in India, the startup revolution that's happening in India, and the healthcare revolution that's starting off in India. If you combine these three, what are the policy things that we could do to make things even stronger? The first thing that comes to my mind is the ability to be able to, I think the biggest power is in making sure that the quality of, India is home to a lot of quality doctors. It's probably we have 1 million doctors today in India, 1 million doctors. The only 2 countries ahead of us are China and US. Now, the problem also is that among these doctors, there are also those who are not registered, and there are also those who are not available, they're not genuine practitioners. Now, how do we pinpoint, in a land that's so big, about 1.3 billion people, how do we find the practitioners who are not very, legitimate? So I think digital initiatives where we have the registration directories completely digitalized, so that with a single call we can figure out whether this doctor is genuinely what he's claiming to be a doctor, is he or not. I think that will reduce a lot of injuries and deaths that are happening today because of doctors who are not practicing very well. So digitalization on the government front of the registrations and the elements there will be really helpful for the entire ecosystem. And opening that up will allow companies like us and many more to connect in and provide a much better holistic experience to the consumer. The second one is also, hopefully we will be able to move regulation and policy to add more digital into them. If you open up a policy document today, I think we should count the number of digital words that are there in those documents. I think being very fair, these documents were created in the last 10, 15 years. But digital today has become a very prominent force. So I hope that in all the documents, we today can see traces of digital, where people can recommend having physical or digital records. That will help go a long way in making sure that we can we can use this digital base that is being created and use it for taking healthcare forward. So these are a couple of points I think will be very helpful, and hoping to add more value to the discussion going forward.
Thanks, Shashank. Now we'll move to all we do in terms of financing, pharma. So at the end, how do you take these things to the consumer? So one of the biggest revolutions that's happening on digitization is the e-pharmacies. I have with me Hemant Bhardwaj, and I would like him to talk for maybe around 5 minutes on what are the things that he's expecting as a revolution in the e-pharmacy space, and what are the enabling regulations that he's looking at. Will probably help him or help others in this space do a fair job in terms of outreach. As Sudarshan says, 50% of the people have access. Pharmaceuticals, probably it could be less, because the high-end medicines or the medicines you need probably you won't find in the country. How do you make them available? So, Hemant.
Thank you, Rajendra. In addition to the e-pharmacy, definitely I would like to talk about it, but I would like to basically say that, we are in a very interesting phase, and Indians are always lucky, and they are lucky this time too. We are always getting the best of the technology to use. We are always at the cutting edge of the adoption, and then that's the beauty. But technology has its own merits and demerits. It moves at a lightning speed. Today, what is relevant, tomorrow in technology, it may not be relevant. Brands get built and they get vanished very quickly. So that lightning speed of technology, whether it's the generation of the technology or it is the adoption of the technology, puts an onus on us who are in the ecosystem, whether we are regulators, whether we are business guys, whether we are consumers, to ensure that we have an ecosystem which is supported by policies which also moves at lightning speed. And if that doesn't happen, unfortunately, we will always have a gap between what is basically a consumer is looking for and what we will be able to give because of the constraint we have in the ecosystem. I would like to basically assess it from outside in. Yeah, just try to see yourself as a consumer. We are all have become restless. We can't wait. We need now. That's the kind of consumer we have become. We have spoiled. We are spoiled for choices. If you don't give me, I will look outside. I will look outside beyond 7 seas. That's how people are behaving today. And it's not an urban phenomenon. It's moving into the interiors of India. Smartphones have revolutionized the way we consume things. Okay? And that's the tool which is the future which we need to worry about and take care of. Policies have to be there to ensure that things are moving in the right direction. Technology can make chaos, but policies will ensure that technology is on the right track. Similarly, policies have to catch up with technology because they cannot sit and say, oh, we have a speed at which we work. Because consumer is saying, please give me what I need. Whether it's a car, whether it's a needle, whether it's e-pharmacy. 40 million people currently are buying things online. Next year it is going to be 100 million. And at that rate, probably you can understand where it's going. Consumer doesn't want to go out. He wants to buy it where he is. Okay? Now, in that scenario, if we are not thinking of enabling policies or getting policies enabled, I think we are not doing justice as citizen of India. The beauty is that people are coming up with new ideas. It's a world of startups, and oldies like us also getting into the startup. But it is very, very important that we together enable policy and IT enables policy. I think Mr. Sudarshan said one thing. We are strong in pharmaceutical industry, probably one of the world leaders, and we are the world leaders in IT. And this deadly combination is sitting here in India. And we as an ecosystem has to leverage that. Okay? Today, if you see the healthcare industry, there are three kind of challenges. I'm very new to this space, so I normally take the public domain inputs to basically build my thought process. The challenges which we are facing today is basically high cost of healthcare services. The challenges which we are facing today is lack of specialized talent. The challenge which we are facing today is how we can reach out to the interiors of India. And we all know that technology is the answer. We know the kind of quality of products available in the interiors of India. Why can't we use technology? Just because somebody didn't envision that technology like online will happen 100 years down the line, it doesn't mean that there is some issue with that particular channel. I think what we need to do is enable that channel and encourage those players who are basically have the intent to get compliant with the policies. Don't basically kill the channel. Channel is important. All the channel will exist. Just because internet came, television has not died down in India. Newspaper are still having a lot of ads every day in your newspaper. It shows how strong they are still in this India. India is a very different country. We cannot compare India with other countries and take example. We need to know the nuances of each country before we take a call as an entrepreneur or the policymaker. Okay? And in that scenario, when we are saying that hundreds of millions of people in India are going to buy online, we decided that probably there is a big opportunity for us to get into this space, which is at this point in time very mature but highly inefficient. Technology is the only answer. Technology can track how things are moving. There is a record. You can backtrack it. You can track it to the end point where it started. And that's where we have to go to. Hospitals, clinics, doctors can all be benefited by this technology. Telemedicine, great tool, which will basically can address the shortage of our talent in our country. Technology, great tool to reach out. Every nook and corner, yes, then somebody will say there is no light in the rural India, how you will make the internet work for them. Yes, we have to figure out a solution for that. But don't kill technology. Technology has to be the enabler. We should look for that. And what we are doing is that as a company who is too young, we basically said that, okay, let's get compliant and see how we can get compliant to a DNC Act which was written in 1940. And we are happy that we have come out with a business model and the technology which will help us to get compliant with 1940 DNC Act. And we are very sure that when we will launch our platform very soon, both the regulators and the ecosystem as well as the consumer will benefit from this platform when it reaches out to millions of Indians, and we will be able to provide them genuine medicines. And I think that is the best service we as an ecosystem can deliver to the patients who are suffering from ailments and chronic diseases. Also, we have basically on the verge of tying up with one of the biggest conglomerate to reach out to rural India. I think if that execution and the dream comes true, I think PMHLC will be doing a great service to the ecosystem. That's what I would like to close with. I will basically, when my term comes again, probably I will talk about PMHLC. Thank you.
Thanks, Hemant. You know, the money, the pharma, the technology, everything needs one thing, human resources. We have Dr. S.D. Gupta, who is the president of IHMR University. Would like to hear from you, sir, is like, what are the policy changes you would like, or if you would like changes in the education system which can be able to get the resources that these people need? Over to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me in this summit. I've been in medical education and training since 1968, more than 45 years now. We were very proud of our education, how we were trained. But we also lament so much today that how medical education has gone, which is responsible for producing the providers of healthcare. And I think let's look at the things from two lenses. Medical education as such, how it's doing, and what digitalization or digitization can help it improve, and what policy frameworks we should need to make or enable medical education using digital technology to improve education systems. I think it's not unknown to us what is the current scenario in medical education. We have now around 400 plus medical colleges. Many more are going to be there. There is no policy that how these should come up. And there are, of course, set norms from the Medical Council of India that who is eligible and what are the requirements to set up a medical college. But how does it work? It's not unknown to us. People go on setting up medical colleges without resources, and a very important resource is faculty. So today the crisis is what we are producing in the medical colleges. They are short of faculty. Their educational content is outdated. Their technology of teaching is outdated, and moreover, what is happening is the students are not interested. I tell you, I am not exaggerating the things. The classes are empty. Why these classes are empty? Probably the students' expectations are very different. They would not like to come to class to listen to boring lectures and seeing the faculty reading out the PowerPoint, which is the only digital technology today's faculty use. So what they are showing is also taken off from some site, and the student is very, very intelligent. He opens his own smartphone or brings his laptop and looks at what my teacher is teaching is already there on the net. Why I should come onto the class? That's one part of the story. So what I would say that medical education need to improve, because this is necessary because we are producing providers of healthcare, and which is so important for strengthening health systems, whether this is public sector or private sector. So we need to think on policy that enables faculty development, that enables, Dr. Sudarshan Jain was saying a few minutes back, they did access study. And what is not available is the medical doctor. 50% of the government facilities are vacant. You don't see doctors over there, despite the fact government has appointed doctors over there. Why are they not going? Should then the patient be, should they suffer if the doctor is not coming? What are the technologies, how we can provide them care then? E-pharmacy is one. The other ways of telemedicine or this digital kiosks, low-level people can really put algorithms and find out the ailment and then provide treatment over there through e-pharmacy. There are many things that can be done at the delivery level. But what to do with the medical education itself, which is responsible for producing people who are quite, aware of what is required. So I believe that the three things which are very important in medical education, which requires policy reforms, is reforming medical education itself, and reforming agency that is responsible for making legislations and regulations for medical education. I mean to say Medical Council of India. So there are three things that I see. There are faculty, there are students, and there are classrooms. Classrooms are totally outdated. Nobody is using digital technology or any other technology except giving lectures on the mic. Faculty is not prepared, they are never trained how to teach. What is teaching pedagogy? They don't know. They are hired and they directly come to the classroom and they don't know what to teach. And third is there's a student. The modern day students are very, very intelligent people. They can understand very quickly whether the teacher is updated on the subject or not. They will catch you in the class that you are not teaching right and pointing out that this is not right. So what I am trying to say, this is the story of medical education in brief. So we need reforms in faculty development, faculty hiring, their training in teaching, pedagogy, and then updating the infrastructure in medical colleges is very, very important. The time has changed, the technology has tremendously moved up, and we need to update medical schools. They should bring in digital technology to teach. There's so many now. I tell you, we at IIHMR brought digital technology long back. Our whole campus is Wi-Fi, our library is automated, you can access information anywhere. The teaching material is available on the websites. The students can access information because they need information 24/7. They are so inquisitive about learning. Now comes the policy. So we have to go for approval from the All India Council of Technical Education, and there is a requirement that there should be a desktop computer between two students. So we have a large student body, so in our institute there are 400 computers sitting, and we made that every student has laptop or iPad, and we supplied that. And when the inspection team comes, they say, why don't you have desktops? We need 400 desktops. No, we have given iPads and laptops to every student, and this is Wi-Fi. They can read and study anywhere on the campus. While they're chatting with their girlfriend, still they can study anywhere. No. This is against the rules. This is not in the policy. We need to have the desktop on the table. Now, that is a kind of environment. So we are looking for some enabling policy environment that this medical education becomes appropriate and updated and keeps pace with the development all over the world. And tomorrow's world I see is maybe there are no students in the classroom. There will be all digital technology, and what you should do then in the classroom is do problem solving with the student. Do some participatory learning. Satisfy their inquiries in the classroom rather than doing one-to-one lecture or didactic lectures. Give them material online. This is where digital technology can help. So the students can study themselves, and you use classroom situation in problem solving, participatory learning, finding out solutions and decisions for the problems. All that could be done over there rather than wasting time in didactic lectures. So technology is very important, but one of the major barriers is policy. I tell you, our university started online programs, full-fledged online programs. And one day I get a letter from the government. This is against the policy and rules. No one can do this in India, online teaching. So my colleagues offloaded the program from the web. Still it is dumped. We spent so much of money in technology, so much money in developing content, and then regularly maintaining the contact with the students who had registered. I think there are policy changes which are needed. Then and then this digital technology, which is already available, can be absorbed in the medical education system today. And definitely, the students will be benefited with this. The classrooms should be, used for learning, for practice, for problem solving, for decision making, art of decision making, and likewise. I think we are only 2 doctors over here. We have the best pedagogy to teach and to learn. All our learning is bedside learning. Unless you touch a patient, you don't learn what this is. You can't have a feel. I think we have forgotten that kind of learning now in today's medical education. So this enabling environment and a policy framework to move into the digital world is very, very important in medical education.
Thanks, Dr. Gupta. I think now I will put to Vikram first. He represents Cellular Operator Association of India, and we just crossed 1 billion cell phones connections in the country. So everything we hear is converging to mHealth. Now, what is COI doing and what is it expecting from the government? You work very closely with policymakers in less than 5 minutes, because I'm seeing that tag that lady out there is showing us. We don't have 15 minutes, but we do have to hear your views and Sanjeev's.
I know, so I'm noticing that the doctors are getting the eminence and we engineers are getting left behind. So notwithstanding that, I'll try and be as crisp and to the point. So the good news is that this year we are celebrating 20 years of mobile telephony in India. And it is this underlying network or the all-pervasive network which covers the country, which has enabled much of whatever has been spoken. So what is it in terms of policy that you need to scale up? See, the good part of IT is you can do a pilot, have it successful, and rapidly scale up. Now, this rapid scaling up will require that this network today, whatever is the network, what the government today is calling highways or information highways, needs to rapidly move up. Some of the things that we look for in policy terms is that unlike most developed countries which you tend to look at, where the attention fraternity gathered here today, to implement your digital or the mHealth program as a medical fraternity, you must take a little step outside, getting your regulator to speak to the telecom regulator to say, hey, if I have to provide digital health, mHealth, this is the kind of demand that we have only as one sector. The second thing in policy terms from a medical point of view is when you have to develop this infrastructure. So all new hospitals or a new infrastructure that you make, ab initio as part of your design of the hospital should integrate the optical fiber connectivity or the wireless connectivity, whether it's inside hospitals or otherwise, so that it is a plug and play. The other part is that we are facing, in policy terms, India has the most stringent policy in terms of EMF exposure, right? 1/10, the WHO, medical fraternity has said that. The WHO specifies the levels, we are at 1/10. And today, imagine, the South Delhi, just for example, South Delhi Municipal Corporation shut down about 10 towers over the weekend, maybe wants to shut down another 50. So in policy terms, what is it? Is that local self-government people want to tax the tower to fill up their coffers. So we are lacking in policy terms a national right-of-way policy. It's something like, RWA folks get up and say this, like a road in front of the society which serves the common network of roads. Hey, I'm scared of EMF exposure despite the best international norms. You take the tower away from here, you shut this road. Imagine you shut the road in front of your, let's say, society. How does that society expect to get the network coverage? You want the network coverage, you don't want the tower. It cannot happen. So in policy terms, that's where from the medical fraternity, one great thing, recently the Secretary Telecom has met with Urban Affairs Secretary that all government buildings should have a tower and in-building built there. So today at this forum, I'm requesting the medical fraternity that a similar dispensation to install towers and in-building in all hospitals across the country will greatly facilitate access and affordability. Some of you mentioned that. If I have to imagine if I was dependent on trying to reach out to a Practo or to reach out to my doctor through my internet device, which Shashank spoke of, and you shut off the tower. How do you go about providing medical health care? So, and this, the other policy thing is, we talk too much, and the action plan, we have a 600 million target, right? Broadband connections, that too is at 512 and 2 meg. Guys, come on, be realistic. We put too many targets out, and India, itna bada desh hai, we do this, that. On ground, discipline, and if there is a decision, implement. There's too much, I hear the pain that he has. The regulator has to be kind of, revamped. The regulator who regulates that sector. And the good news is that, like a Uber, I took a Uber to come here, and some of the transport problems I tried to overcome that way. Now the sharing economy growing, another policy maybe you can consider, is that cost of medical equipment is expensive. About 10 years back, I heard a German lab offering their lab when India is awake and they are asleep. So if the medical equipment is IP connected, internet connected, equipment lying idle at some part of the world could be put to better use in a sharing economy. And what is the policy for? This is just a thought, but in terms of how you could use it. And last, I'll sign off by, it's not policy, but lighter note. So maybe Shashank, you're putting the doctors together for patients. I'm sure a lot of, like Shadi.com, a lot of doctors want to link up with other doctors in the, marriage field, I know, and maybe just a sidebar conversation on your site. So these are some of the policy things that we from the telecom sector and the broadband sector are looking at. And I think the pace of decision making, there's too much talk, less action. We need to get more action on the ground.
Thanks, Vikram. You're always very crisp and blunt. Sushil has come late, so I'm going to punish him. He's going to speak in 3 minutes of what fantastic work he has done. See, all the policies and frameworks we are talking, we have something called M2M, machine to machine in health. Sushil has been the driving force. He's the Deputy Director General of the TEC under Ministry of Communication and IT. They come out with a wonderful report that the Minister released on the 12th of May. In 3 minutes, Sushil, if you can talk about that report, what you did and what are your future plans?
Sorry for the delay.
Don't need to be sorry.
There is traffic between Delhi and Gurgaon. It has taken more than 1 hour from Delhi to Gurgaon. Actually, in the mid of 2013, this DOT decided that a policy is to be framed on machine-to-machine communication, and the standards are to be finalized. Then the standard work was taken up by Telecom Engineering Center, and the work groups were formed on PPP model, covering having all stakeholders from the industry and telecom service providers, multinational company, IT and ITS, and the standardization bodies. These working groups were in automotive, health, surveillance, and power and gateway and architecture. As there will be billions of devices, and there is a projection that 50 billion devices are expected by 2020, and Indian share will be around 250 million. And in health domain, India may have around 10 billion devices. Then the first technical report has been released in May 2015, and in all the 5 vertical groups, and health is one of them. In health, we are having machine-to-machine communication in remote health management. As number of devices exist, and the sensors will be used in the devices, and there are 3 challenges for using the billions of sensors and devices worldwide and even in India. First is the deployment of IPv6 that the DOT has already taken up, and the IPv6 deployment is network is being upgraded by the telecom service provider and network operators. and even the pan-area network, we expect that the chipset manufacturers will have either the dual stack or the IPv6 stack. Second one is the battery of the sensors. A lot of research is going on this issue, that the sensor should be self-sustainable, or it should have long battery life. And third one is the standards, so that the devices should be interoperable. There should be interoperability at the network level, application level, and the device level. And as far as we have studied for the remote health management and for wellness of the person, this personal health devices and which is using the Continua standards. Continua has developed a number of standards which have been approved by ITU, and these are being harmonized in 1M2M also. And if the harmonization work gets completed and further 1M2M goes to ITU, and these M2M standards are approved by International Telecom Union, they may be adopted globally. And these devices may revolutionize the health scenario, at least in the rural areas where 74% of the population lives and we don't have the hospitals and the doctors. The vital parameters of the patient can be transmitted over the network, like we are having the NOFA network being built up even up to the villages, and villages will be having Wi-Fi also. This work is already going on, and these parameters can be stored in the cloud, and the doctors can monitor these parameters and further advise the patients. So the work is further going on. We are further studying the continuous standards, ITU standards, and the further harmonization being done in 1M2M. 1M2M is creating a service layer where the data from all the vertical devices will be stored and how it will go. So second level of reports are expected sometime in the month of November, and we expect we will be able to finalize something in the health, at least in the health domain. Thank you.
Thanks, Sushilji. I think all of those who are really concerned about machine-to-machine standards, I would like you all to connect with Sushilji after this session, because this is totally done in partnership with people like you who are contributing to the actual standard formulation. There's also
these reports are available on TEC website, and this www.tec.gov.in/technical-report.
Yeah.
And I will request that the people may download these reports and may study and further contribute their expertise to the working groups.
Thank you. So the last word is always with the government. Very dear friend Sanjeev Kumar, it's in his personal capacity, I would suggest, because he's also part of the group that is finalizing the health policy. So sir, last 5 minutes for you, and after that we have told them to ask questions. Though we're running out of time, we'll definitely have to take questions. Over to you.
Thank you, Rajan. And this Digital India conference is very important to us. I am accompanied by 9 of my colleagues from Healthcare Technology Division, which looks after application of initiatives like we are discussing here into health. Then we have Health Management Information System and Healthcare Financing. These are 3 of the 8 divisions we have in my organization, National Health Resource Center. There are 3 things which I heard from the group. One is supportive environment. Second is policy framework. And the third is, if an initiative is available, why is it available for years and years and the last person is still not benefiting? How and what we are doing to scale it up immediately so that everybody can benefit. Look, coming to supporting environment, and I will resist from going into IT policy requirement and supportive. Others have talked about it and they know much better. I will confine to health and the interface between health and what is happening in IT and how health can benefit. Looking at the supportive environment, Health for All, 1978 they started talking about Health for All. Then late 90s and last about 10 years they started talking about universal health care. Everybody should have access to health care. Recently, and the current policy which is being revised is looking at health as a right of everybody. So the environment is changing towards making health universal. Everybody should have access to health. But when you reflect on our ancient Indian culture, for 11 years, many times a day, when I used to go to class, to hospital, to clinics, I used to read Sharira Madhyam Khalu Dharm Sadhanam. You know, AIMS logo, at the bottom you have Sharira Madhyam Khalu Dharm Sadhanam. It is your body through which you will be able to perform all your duties. Dharma is not religion in our language, it is your duty. So when you translate into religion, that doesn't really reflect what we say. Then you keep hearing Sarve Santu Niramaya. And I grew up in an Arya Samaji family. Jivema Sharda Shatam, Shruniyama Sharda Shatam, Prabhurvama Sharda Shatam, for 100 years. For 5,000 years, we in India have been saying that let's live for 100 years, and with good hearing, with good eyesight, and healthy lifestyle. So this is the environment. The rest of the world realized only about 25, 30 years back, but it was there in our culture. Let's revive that. Let's get everybody in the government and everybody on the street concerned about the health which is there in our ancient culture. And recent push to yoga. I started doing yoga when I was 12 years. Every one of us was doing, but it has been brought to official forum recently, and that's complete lifestyle. Yoga is yam, niyam, patyahar. That is your lifestyle. What do you eat? How much you sleep? And what do you do from morning to evening? Then is asana pranayam. We get confined to asana pranayam as yoga. And then the last three components are asana, pranayam, dhyana, dharana and samadhi. These are the 8 components of yoga. So if you look at yoga in a comprehensive manner, you have healthy lifestyle. So this is another enabling environment and supportive environment we have. So this is on supporting environment to have universal health care. And when you look at each one of us in the room, we fall only in 2 categories. One is those who are healthy, and some of us have some ailment or the other. What do you want to do for those who are healthy? Keep them healthy. That should be the focus. Unfortunately, when we talk of health, we talk of only disease. And I at times jokingly tell my colleagues in the health ministry, it is not a ministry of health, it is ministry of disease. You have programs for disease control, you have programs for disease prevention, you have programs for disease cure and treatment. What about health? What about those who are healthy? What are you doing to keep them healthy? So we need to look at those who are healthy, and you have a lot of devices. I carry a mobile phone, it has S Health. And my target is every year I should walk 10,000 steps. I don't meet it. Normally, once in a week only I meet that target of 10,000 steps. So you have devices which are already, but why everybody is not using those devices? We have to push in that direction. Each one of us monitor. Those of us who are healthy, what are we doing to stay healthy through yoga, through other devices, and in your pocket your mobile phone which will give you how well you are doing. What you eat. Again, your mobile phone, you enter the information, you know how many calories you are eating, what fat you are taking, are we doing the right dietary practices which are promoted for healthy lifestyle. So this is to keep those who need to be healthy and need to continue to be healthy. Bimari na pade, that should be our approach. Those who are sick, what do you need for them? They should get access to the person who can advise them what needs to be done. I went to Tripura, to a remote PHC, and there was an optometrist sitting with equipment and a child she was examining, and I said, are you an ophthalmologist? No, I am not an ophthalmologist, I am only an optometrist, I can use this equipment. 15 minutes later, I came back after taking the round of the PHC, and she had a prescription for the child. You are not a doctor, how did you give the prescription? She said, no, we have a doctor sitting in Tripura. He has in the capital city who has given the prescription. He is looking at all what I am doing 200 kilometers from where I am, and here is the prescription given by an then this initiative started in 2007. Why did it take 2015 to reach to all the CHCs in Tripura? Forget about rest of the country. The technology was there. it was being done, and they have only 19 ophthalmologists in the whole state. And next year, 9 of them are going to retire, so they will have only 10. And they are still able to give this service. So that is one example. Second is Rajasthan. I went around many PHCs, CHCs and hospitals. After the clinic was over, the pharmacist was entering all the prescriptions. And anybody sitting in Jaipur will know which medicines are moving faster, which medicines they are going to run out of stock, and make arrangement to get those medicines. But why not every state, every health facility has this software so that they can monitor availability of medicines? So availability of medicine is the second initiative. Third is quality. The quality of care being provided in healthcare facilities, that also can be monitored. It's happening in many parts. Fourth and the most important aspect of care is 65 million people in India go below poverty line because of expenditure on health. And as some of you said, 60 to 70% of that expenditure is on medicine. Rajasthan is able to buy generic medicine, give free medicine. Why not every citizen in India get free medicine through the same initiative? Coming to the platform available to scale it up, government is very serious about it. We had a National Health Innovation Summit. Dr. S.D. Gupta was there, and I am sure some of you in the audience were also there. They bring together all states and union territories and private sector, present what you are doing. They evaluated those which are replicable, which are cost effective, and effective in doing what they claim they are doing, can be scaled up. Come make a presentation, and all these are available on the website of National Health System Resource Center, all these innovations. Second thing which the minister launched in Shimla on 2nd of July is National Health Innovation Portal. If you have a breakthrough technology, you think it is great, go to the website of capital N, capital H, capital I, small n, P. Go to the website, upload it there. There will be a group which will look at it. It will be evaluated. If it is effective, replicable, and costly, it is within affordable limits, and it addresses the burden of disease. They will evaluate it, and then if it is evaluated as effective, government will provide funding under National Health Mission to the states to scale it up in the whole state. So this is the platform which is available for scaling up, and I feel pain. I feel pain when you have devices, you have technology, somebody in some corner of India is using, but it is not being scaled up. So this is the policy framework and the enabling environment, and a platform to scale it up in a short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very well said. See, right from the angels to the government, everyone has money. So don't worry. Though we are out of time, I would still take 3 questions quickly. Yep.
I just want to leave this forum with one thought. We're talking about enabling internet, we're talking about enabling mobile, we're talking about digitization. In this very country, if you look at financial services, you have a company called Paytm, which has leveraged financial technology. In this very country, you have a company called Naukri, which has brought employment to the net, right? Job searching to the net. In this very country, you have something called Flipkart, which we all use. And these are all internet enabled. We have Make My Trip, which has enabled travel on technology. I think what we all need desperately, and there's an opportunity, is a $1 billion valuation company in the healthcare. And I think that's the aspiration I'd like to leave.
So we could quickly take 3 questions. Don't make comments. Just if you have questions, we'll be the happiest guys. So I'll make like the speaker and say no questions. Thank you so much, our expert panelists. I think we have overstepped our time. It wouldn't have been possible without you all. Thank you so much.